The space station Concordia floated in the dark between two empires. It was a neutral place, built for peace talks and trade agreements. Today, it would host something far more important. Humans and the Kithrani Empire would meet for the first time to discuss ending their bloody border war. Commander Daniel Carter stood at the viewport of his shuttle as it approached the station. He watched the massive structure grow larger, its silver ring spinning slowly against the stars. Behind him, his small delegation prepared for what could be the most important meeting in human history. Commander, we dock in 5 minutes, Lieutenant Megan Torres said from behind him. Carter nodded, but did not turn around. Torres had served with him for 6 years. She knew he liked these quiet moments before difficult missions. She also knew what the Kithrani would see when they looked at him, and it worried her. The left side of Carter's face was a map of old burns. The scars ran down his neck, across his arms, and covered much of his torso beneath his uniform. His hands were rough with healed tissue. To humans, these marks told a story of survival. But the Kithrani were different. They could heal from any wound. They had never seen scars before, and they would not understand. Ambassador Kevin Shaw joined them at the viewport. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent 30 years negotiating with alien species, but even he seemed nervous today. Remember, Shaw said quietly, the Kithrani value strength above all else. They respect power. They will test us from the moment we step off this shuttle. I understand, Carter replied. His voice was calm and low. They may say things about your appearance, Shaw continued carefully. Their culture has no concept of permanent injury. To them, scars might seem like a sign of weakness or poor genetics. Carter finally turned to face the ambassador. The scars on his face caught the light from the viewport. Let them say what they want. We are here to make peace, not to win arguments. Torres frowned but said nothing. She had seen Carter face insults before. He never lost his composure. But she also knew there were limits to any man's patience. The shuttle docked with a soft thud. The airlock hissed open, and the human delegation stepped onto Concordia Station. A group of Kithrani waited for them in the receiving hall. The Kithrani were tall and elegant. Their skin was pale blue, and their eyes glowed with a soft golden light. They wore flowing robes of white and silver, and they moved with the grace of dancers. Everything about them spoke of perfection and power. At the center of the group stood Queen Vilithra herself. She was taller than the others, and a crown of crystal sat upon her head. Her face was beautiful and cold, like a statue carved from ice. She watched the humans approach with an expression that revealed nothing. Beside her stood High Commander Zorath, the leader of the Kithrani military. He was broad and muscular for his species, and his golden eyes burned with barely hidden contempt as he studied the human delegation. Ambassador Shaw stepped forward and bowed respectfully. Queen Vilithra, thank you for agreeing to these talks. Humanity hopes this will be the first step toward lasting peace between our peoples. Vilithra inclined her head slightly. We shall see, Ambassador. Peace requires strength from both sides. We came to determine if humans possess such strength. Zorath's gaze moved from Shaw to Carter, and his lip curled with disgust. Is this the best your species could send? A diplomat with no fire in his eyes and a soldier who looks like he lost a battle with himself. The Kithrani officers behind him laughed quietly. Carter stood perfectly still, his expression unchanged. Zorath stepped closer, examining Carter's scars with open curiosity and disdain. Tell me, human, what happened to you? Were you born defective? Did your healers fail? Or are your people simply too primitive to repair such damage? High Commander, Shaw interjected. Commander Carter is one of humanity's most decorated officers. His record speaks for itself. His record? Zorath laughed. Look at him. He carries the marks of failure on his skin. Among my people, such a creature would never be allowed to serve. We would not insult our enemies by sending them a broken thing to negotiate. Torres took a half step forward, her hand moving toward her sidearm. Carter raised one scarred hand slightly, and she stopped. "I, Commander Zorath," Carter said quietly. "I did not come here to discuss my appearance. I came to discuss peace. If my scars offend you, I apologize, but I cannot remove them. They are part of who I am." Zorath snorted. "Part of who you are? Then who you are is weak, damaged. Among the Kithrani, wounds heal within hours. We carry no marks because we have no failures. Perhaps that is the difference between our species. We are perfect. You are flawed." Queen Velithra watched this exchange with interest, but did not intervene. If anything, she seemed mildly amused by Zorath's behavior. "Shall we proceed to the negotiation chamber?" Shaw asked, trying to move past the uncomfortable moment. Velithra gestured gracefully toward a corridor. "Indeed. Let us see if humans can negotiate better than they can heal." More quiet laughter from the Kithrani delegation. The humans followed their hosts through the station's gleaming halls. Torres walked beside Carter, her jaw tight with anger. "Sir," she whispered, "you don't have to accept this. You could tell them the truth about how you got those scars." Carter shook his head slightly. "It does not matter how I got them. What matters is that we stop this war before more people die on both sides. But they are treating you like a joke. They are treating all of us like jokes." "Let them," Carter said. "Pride has started more wars than it has ended. I will not let mine start another." Torres fell silent, but her anger did not fade. The negotiation chamber was a large circular room with a long table at its center. The humans sat on one side, the Kithrani on the other. For hours, they discussed borders, trade rights, and military withdrawals. Through it all, Zorath continued his campaign of subtle insults, referring to Carter as the Marked One and the Broken Commander. Carter absorbed every insult without reaction. He spoke only when necessary, and his words were always measured and calm. This seemed to frustrate Zorath even more. When the first session ended, the delegations returned to their separate quarters. Queen Velithra remained in the chamber for a moment, staring at the door through which the humans had left. "Your Majesty?" one of her advisors asked. "Is something wrong?" Velithra's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "That human commander. His scars are extensive. They must have caused tremendous pain. Indeed, Your Majesty. It is a wonder he survived whatever caused them." Velithra turned to her intelligence officer. "Find out how he received those marks. I want to know everything about this Daniel Carter." The officer bowed. "It will be done, my queen." Velithra looked back at the empty doorway. A man who carries such damage and still stands tall. There is something here we do not understand. I do not like mysteries. 3 days passed on Concordia Station, and the peace talks went nowhere. Every session followed the same pattern. Ambassador Shaw would propose terms. The Kithrani would reject them, and High Commander Zorath would find new ways to mock Commander Carter's scars. "Perhaps we should send the Broken One to fetch our refreshments," Zorath said during the third day's meeting. "Surely that is a task suitable for his capabilities." The Kithrani officers laughed. Carter said nothing. He simply looked at the star map on the table and waited for the noise to stop. Torres sat beside him, her hands clenched into fists beneath the table. She had watched this abuse continue day after day, and her patience was running thin. After the session ended, she followed Carter to his quarters. "Commander, this cannot go on," she said as the door closed behind them. "They are making a fool of you. They are making fools of all of us." Carter removed his uniform jacket and sat down heavily on his bunk. For a moment, Torres saw how tired he truly was. The calm mask he wore in public had slipped just slightly. "What would you have me do, Lieutenant?" he asked. "Challenge Zorath to a duel? Start the war again with my own hands?" "Tell them the truth," Torres said. "Tell them how you got those scars. Tell them what you did at Kepler 7. Carter's expression hardened. "No, why not? You saved over 200 people that day. You went into that fire again and again until your own body was falling apart. If they knew that, they would never dare to mock you again. And that is exactly why I will not tell them," Carter said. "I did not save those people so that I could use their suffering to win arguments. I saved them because they needed saving. That is all. It is not a story I tell to impress aliens who do not respect us." Torres sat down across from him. Her anger faded into something softer, something sadder. "You are too good for this, sir," she said quietly. "You deserve better than their contempt." Carter smiled slightly. It was a rare expression on his scarred face. "Perhaps. But this peace treaty is not about what I deserve. It is about the millions of people on both sides who will die if we fail. I can endure a little contempt for their sake." Torres nodded slowly. She understood his logic, even if she hated watching him suffer through it. Meanwhile, in the Kathrani section of the station, Queen Velithra read through the intelligence reports on Commander Daniel Carter. Her officers had gathered every piece of information they could find in human databases, but most of it was ordinary. Military Academy records, service history, COMMENDATION stat. Then she found a file that was different from the others. It was heavily classified, and her officers had needed considerable effort to access it. The file was labeled Kepler 7 Incident. Velithra opened it and began to read. The report described a small farming colony on the edge of human space. 8 years ago, it had been attacked by Raxian raiders, a brutal species known for capturing and selling sentient beings. The colony's defensive systems had failed, and the raiders had landed in force. During the attack, the colony's main shelter complex had caught fire. Over 200 civilians were trapped inside, including 60 children from the colony school. The local emergency teams could not reach them. The heat was too intense, and the structure was on the verge of collapse. That was when a young officer named Daniel Carter had acted. Velithra read the next section slowly, her golden eyes growing wider with each sentence. Carter had been on shore leave, visiting his sister's family. When the shelter caught fire, he did not wait for orders. He did not wait for proper equipment. He wrapped wet cloth around his face and hands and entered the burning building. The report contained statements from survivors. They described watching Carter emerge from the flames, carrying 2 children, one under each arm. His clothes were smoking. His skin was already burned. But he handed the children to the medical teams, took a breath, and went back inside. He went back inside 7 times. Each trip added new burns. Medical officers begged him to stop. His sister screamed for him to stop. He refused. He said there were still people inside. He said he could hear them calling for help. On his 7th trip, he carried out his sister's daughter, a 6-year-old girl named Emma. She was the last survivor. Carter collapsed immediately after placing her in a medic's arms. His heart stopped twice on the way to the hospital ship. He spent 14 months in recovery. The doctors offered reconstructive procedures to remove his scars. He declined. The report included his statement explaining why. "I keep them because they remind me why I serve. Not for glory, not for recognition. I serve so that children like Emma can grow up in a galaxy that is a little bit safer." Velithra closed the file. For a long time, she sat in silence, staring at nothing. Finally, she summoned High Commander Zorath to her chambers. Zorath entered with his usual confident stride. He bowed briefly to his queen and waited for her to speak. "You have been enjoying yourself these past few days," Relithra said. Her voice was cold and flat. Zorath smiled. "The human makes it easy, Your Majesty." He sits there like a broken statue, absorbing every insult. He has no pride, no fire. I begin to wonder if humans have any spirit at all. "Tell me," Relithra said slowly, "what do you know about the human concept of sacrifice?" Zorath frowned. "Sacrifice? They speak of it sometimes. Giving something up for a greater purpose. It seems like an excuse for weakness to me. The strong do not need to sacrifice. They simply take what they want." Relithra stood and walked to her viewport. The stars glittered in the darkness beyond. "Among our people, wounds heal within hours. We have never known permanent damage. We have never faced the choice that humans face every time they are injured." "What choice, Your Majesty?" Relithra turned to face him. "The choice to accept permanent pain, permanent scars, permanent loss, and to do so willingly for the sake of others." Zorath's frown deepened. "I do not understand." "No," Relithra said quietly. "You do not. And that is the problem. We have been mocking Commander Carter for his weakness, but I am beginning to suspect that we have made a terrible mistake." She handed him the intelligence file. "Read this. Then come back to me and explain how our definition of strength compares to what this human did on a burning colony 8 years ago." Zorath took the file, his confidence finally showing cracks of uncertainty. He left the Queen's chambers to read about Kepler 7, and everything he thought he knew about humans began to crumble. 8 years before the peace talks on Concordia Station, Lieutenant Daniel Carter stood in a green field on the colony world of Kepler 7. The sky was blue and peaceful. The air smelled like fresh grass and the distant sweetness of fruit orchards. His sister, Rachel, ran toward him across the field, her daughter Emma bouncing on her hip. Rachel was laughing, her brown hair flying behind her. "Danny!" she shouted. "You actually came. I did not think the Navy would let you go." Carter caught his sister in a careful hug, mindful of the child between them. "I told my captain I had an important mission. Meeting my niece for the first time." Emma looked at him with wide, curious eyes. She was 6 years old, small and delicate, with her mother's smile. "Are you really a spaceship driver?" Emma asked seriously. Carter laughed. "Something like that. Do you want to hear about the stars?" Emma nodded eagerly, and Carter spent the afternoon telling her stories about distant worlds and strange alien species. Rachel watched them from her kitchen window, happier than she had been in years. Her little brother had finally come home. That night, the Vraxian raiders came. Carter woke to the sound of explosions. Through his window, he saw ships descending through the clouds, their hulls painted with the cruel symbols of the Vraxian slave traders. He was out of bed and running before his mind fully processed what was happening. The colony's defense grid was supposed to stop attacks like this. But something had gone wrong. The shields were down. The automated weapons were silent. The Vraxians landed unopposed and began their harvest. Carter found Rachel in the main square, clutching Emma to her chest. Hundreds of colonists were running in all directions, screaming and crying. Vraxian soldiers moved through the chaos, stunning people with electric weapons and loading them onto transport vehicles. "The shelter!" Carter shouted over the noise. "Get to the community shelter. It is underground. They cannot reach you there." He grabbed Rachel's arm and pulled her toward the large building at the center of town. Other colonists had the same idea. Hundreds of people poured through the doors, seeking safety below ground. Carter pushed Rachel and Emma through the entrance. "Go down. Stay hidden. I will find the defense controls and try to restart the grid." "Danny, please," Rachel cried. "Come with us." I will be right behind you, he promised. Now go. He turned and ran toward the colony's administration building, where the defense controls were located. He never reached it. The explosion came from behind him, so powerful it knocked him off his feet. He turned and saw something that would haunt him for the rest of his life. The community shelter was on fire. A Vraxian bomb had hit the building's ventilation system, spreading flames through the entire structure. The underground shelters were still intact, but the building above them was burning, and the only exits were blocked by walls of fire. Over 200 people were trapped below. 60 of them were children from the colony school. Rachel and Emma were down there. Carter ran back toward the burning building. Other colonists tried to stop him. Emergency teams were arriving, but their equipment was meant for small fires, not infernos. They could not get inside. Carter did not wait for them to find a solution. He grabbed a blanket from a nearby cart and dunked it in a water trough. He wrapped it around his head and shoulders, leaving only his eyes exposed. Then he ran into the flames. The heat was unimaginable. It pressed against him from all sides, stealing the air from his lungs. The wet blanket began to steam almost immediately. Carter pushed forward, following the emergency signs toward the underground stairwell. He found the first survivors huddled on the stairs, too afraid to move. A woman and 2 teenage boys. "Follow me," Carter shouted. "Stay low and move fast." He led them out, shielding them with his own body when pieces of burning ceiling fell around them. His arms and back took the hits, but he kept moving. He delivered them to the medical teams outside and immediately turned back. "Sir, you cannot go back in there," a medic yelled. "You are already burned." Carter ignored her. He could hear screaming from inside the building. Children were screaming. He went back inside. The second trip, he carried out an elderly man who could not walk. The third trip, he found a group of children clustered together, crying and holding each other. He could only carry 2 at a time. He took the smallest ones first. Fourth trip. Fifth trip. His blanket had burned away. His uniform was smoking. His skin was blistering, cracking, bleeding. Every breath was agony. "Please stop," the medics begged. "You are killing yourself." Carter looked at the burning building. He could still hear voices inside. "There are more," he said. His voice was barely a whisper. "I can still hear them." Sixth trip. He found a teacher protecting the last group of students with her own body. She was badly burned but still alive. Carter carried her out while the children followed, holding on to each other's hands. One more trip. One more. He found Emma in the deepest part of the shelter, curled up in a corner, surrounded by smoke. Rachel lay beside her, unconscious from breathing the toxic air. Carter could only carry one of them. He looked at his sister. He looked at his niece. The ceiling groaned above them, ready to collapse. Rachel's eyes opened slightly. She saw him standing there, saw the impossible choice he faced. "Take her," Rachel whispered. "Save my baby. Please, Danny, save her." Tears streamed down Carter's burned face. He picked up Emma and ran. He emerged from the building just as the roof collapsed behind him. He handed Emma to a medic and tried to go back for Rachel, but strong hands held him down. "She is gone, sir. The building is gone. You cannot save her," Carter screamed. He fought against the hands holding him, but his body had nothing left to give. His heart stuttered, stopped, and he collapsed into darkness. He woke up 14 months later in a hospital ship, his body wrapped in bandages, his soul wrapped in grief. Rachel had not survived, but Emma had, and so had 193 other colonists who'd have died if one man had not chosen to burn for them. Back in the present, on Concordia Station, Queen Velithera finished reading the full account of Kepler 7. Her hands trembled slightly as she set down the data pad. High Commander Zorath stood before her, his face pale and his eyes empty of their usual arrogance. "Do you understand now?" Velithra asked quietly. Zorath could not meet her gaze. He went back 7 times, knowing each time would cause more damage that would never heal, knowing he might die. For strangers, Velithra added. For other people's children. He destroyed his own body to save people he had never met. How? Zorath whispered. How can any creature do such a thing? Velithra stood and walked to her viewport. That is the question I cannot answer. We regenerate. We heal from everything. We have never had to make the choice that human made. We do not know if we could. She turned to face Zorath, and her golden eyes were cold. We called him broken. We called him weak. We mocked him for the marks he carries. But those marks are not signs of failure, Zorath. They are signs of something we do not have a word for. Zorath swallowed hard. What will you do, Your Majesty? Velithra was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of a queen making a historic decision. I will do something our empire has never done before. I will apologize to a human. The next morning, Queen Velithra summoned her entire council to her private chambers aboard the Kithrani flagship. Admirals, generals, diplomats, and advisors filled the room, confused by the unexpected meeting. High Commander Zorath stood in the corner, silent and pale. Velithra waited until everyone was present before she spoke. I have called you here because we have made a grave error in judgment, she began. For the past 4 days, we have been mocking the human commander for his scars. We have called him broken, weak, and defective. We have treated him with contempt. The council members exchanged puzzled glances. They did not understand why this was a problem. Your Majesty, one admiral said carefully, the human does carry extensive damage. Among our people, such marks would indeed suggest weakness or genetic failure. That is because we cannot imagine any other explanation, Velithra replied. Our bodies heal from any wound within hours. We have never experienced permanent injury. We have never had to choose between our own wholeness and someone else's survival. She activated a holographic display, and the Kepler 7 intelligence file appeared in the air above the table. 8 years ago, Commander Carter was visiting his sister's family on a small farming colony. The colony was attacked by Vraxian raiders. During the attack, the community shelter caught fire with over 200 civilians trapped inside. 60 of them were children. The council listened in silence as Velithra continued. The emergency teams could not reach the survivors. The heat was too intense. The building was collapsing. By every reasonable calculation, those people were going to die. She paused, letting the weight of the moment settle over the room. Commander Carter entered that burning building 7 times. He carried out survivors 2 at a time. Each trip added new burns to his body. Medical officers begged him to stop. His own sister begged him to stop. He refused because he could still hear people calling for help inside. The council members were very still now. Their golden eyes were fixed on their queen. His sister died in that fire, Velithra said quietly. He saved her daughter, his niece, on his final trip. The building collapsed seconds after he emerged. His heart stopped twice. He spent 14 months recovering from his injuries. She turned off the display and looked at each council member in turn. The human doctors offered to remove his scars. They have the technology. He refused. He said the scars remind him why he serves. Silence filled the chamber. No one knew what to say. Finally, one of the younger admirals spoke. Your Majesty, this is remarkable, but I do not understand why it changes anything. The human still carries those marks. He is still damaged. Velithra's eyes flashed with something close to anger. You still do not understand. Let me explain it more clearly. She stepped closer to the young admiral. Commander Carter cannot regenerate. His species heals slowly and imperfectly. Every scar on his body represents pain that will never fade, damage that will never fully repair. He knew this when he entered that building. He knew every trip would leave permanent marks on his flesh. She let that sink in, and he went back anyway, 7 times. Not for glory or recognition or reward. Not because it was his duty. He was on leave. Those were not his people. Those were not his children. He went back because they were in danger and he could help. The council sat in stunned silence. Among our people, Velithra continued, courage is easy. We can charge into any battle knowing that our wounds will heal within hours. We face no permanent consequences for our bravery. But humans face permanent consequences every single time. They have fragile bodies that break and stay broken. And still, they run toward danger to save others. She turned to face the viewport, staring out at the stars. We have been looking at Commander Carter's scars and seeing weakness. But those scars are not signs of weakness. They are proof of something we do not possess. They are proof of a willingness to suffer permanent harm for the sake of strangers. They are proof of a kind of strength we cannot match. High Commander Zorath finally spoke, his voice rough with shame. What would you have us do, Your Majesty? Velithra turned back to face her council. I will call a formal session this afternoon, and I will apologize to Commander Carter in front of both delegations. I will acknowledge our error and show him the respect he deserves. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. A Kithrani queen had never apologized to an alien species before. It was unprecedented. Your Majesty, an elderly advisor said carefully, such an action could be seen as weakness by our enemies. It could undermine our position in the negotiations. No, Velithra said firmly. Admitting a mistake is not weakness. Refusing to admit a mistake, even when the truth is clear, that is weakness. And I will not let my pride prevent me from honoring a man who sacrificed his own body to save children. The council fell silent. There was no argument they could make against their queen's conviction. That afternoon, both delegations gathered in the negotiation chamber. The humans looked tired and frustrated after days of fruitless talks. Commander Carter sat in his usual place, his scarred face calm and unreadable. Queen Velithra entered last. She walked to her seat but did not sit down. Instead, she remained standing and turned to face the human delegation. Ambassador Shaw tensed, wondering what new insult was coming. Commander Daniel Carter, Velithra said formally, I have asked for this session because I have something to say to you. Carter looked up at her, his expression carefully neutral. For the past 4 days, you have been subjected to insults and mockery from members of my delegation, including my High Commander. You have been called broken, weak, and defective because of the scars you carry. The room was absolutely silent. I have recently learned the truth about how you received those scars. I have learned about the colony of Kepler 7. I have learned about the fire, and the people you saved, and the price you paid. Carter's expression flickered slightly, but he said nothing. Velithra took a deep breath. Commander Carter, on behalf of the Kithrani Empire, I offer you my sincere apology. We judged you by standards that do not apply to your species. We saw your scars as marks of failure when they are, in truth, marks of extraordinary courage and sacrifice. High Commander Zorath stepped forward. His face was tight with shame, but he forced himself to speak. I personally mocked you more than anyone else, he said. I called you a broken thing. I questioned why your people would send a damaged specimen to represent them. He swallowed hard. I was wrong. I know now that you are not damaged. You are something I do not have a word for in my language. You are something I do not know if I could ever be. The human delegation sat in stunned silence. Torres's eyes were wet with unshed tears. Ambassador Shaw looked like he might fall out of his chair. Carter stood slowly. He faced Vilithra and Zorath with quiet dignity. "Queen Vilithra, High Commander Zorath, I accept your apology," he said simply. "I hold no grudge against you or your people. You judge me by what you could see. That is natural. We all do this." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "Among humans, we have a saying. True strength is not measured by what you can endure. It is measured by what you are willing to sacrifice for those who cannot protect themselves. I do not know if the Kithrani have a similar concept, but perhaps these peace talks can help us learn from each other." Vilithra studied him for a long moment. Then she asked the question that had been burning in her mind since she first read the Kepler 7 report. "Commander Carter, knowing what you know now, knowing how much it cost you, would you do it again? Would you enter that building 7 times and accept those scars all over again?" Carter did not hesitate. His answer was immediate and certain. Every time, without hesitation. Something shifted in Vilithra's eyes. Something that might have been the beginning of true respect. "Then perhaps," she said slowly, "humans are not the weak species we believed you to be. Perhaps you are something far more dangerous than we ever imagined." Carter allowed himself a small smile. "We prefer the word determined, Your Majesty." The atmosphere in the negotiation chamber had changed completely. Where there had been hostility and contempt, there was now a careful, growing respect. Queen Vilithra and her council looked at the human delegation with new eyes, seeing something they had never noticed before. Ambassador Shaw leaned toward Commander Carter. "That was unexpected," he whispered. "I have never seen a Kithrani ruler apologize to anyone." Carter nodded slightly. "Perhaps they are capable of more than we thought." The formal negotiations resumed, but the tone was entirely different. Zorath no longer interrupted with insults. The Kithrani advisors no longer smirked when humans spoke. Instead, they listened carefully, considering each proposal with genuine attention. By the end of the day, they had made more progress than in the entire previous week. Queen Vilithra raised her hand to pause the discussion. "Before we continue with the specific terms, I wish to add something to our agreement. Something that was not in the original proposals." Shaw tensed slightly. "What did you have in mind, Your Majesty?" Vilithra stood and walked around the table until she stood between the two delegations. "The Kithrani Empire has existed for 12,000 years. In all that time, we have never sought to learn from another species. We believed we were perfect. We believed we had nothing to gain from others." She turned to look at Carter. "But Commander Carter has shown me something we lack. Something we cannot grow or manufacture or conquer. I believe your people call it self-sacrifice. The willingness to suffer for others, even when there is no benefit to yourself." She addressed both delegations now. "I propose that our peace treaty include a cultural exchange program. Kithrani observers will live among humans to study this concept. Human observers will live among us to share their perspective. Perhaps, in time, we can learn from each other." The human delegation exchanged surprised looks. This was far beyond anything they had hoped to achieve. "Your Majesty," Shaw said carefully, "that is a very generous proposal. I believe humanity would welcome such an exchange." Vilithra nodded. "Good. Then let us finalize the details." The negotiations continued for 2 more days, but the hard part was over. Both sides worked together to craft a treaty that would end the border war and establish lasting peace. Trade routes were opened. Military forces were withdrawn. A new era began. On the final day, before the signing ceremony, High Commander Zorath approached Carter in the corridor outside the chamber. "Commander," Zorath said stiffly, "may I speak with you privately?" Carter studied the alien's face. The arrogance was gone. replaced by something that looked almost like humility. Of course, High Commander. They walked to a quiet alcove overlooking the stars. For a moment, Zorath simply stared out at the darkness, gathering his thoughts. I have been a warrior my entire life, Zorath said finally. I have fought in dozens of battles. I have killed enemies without hesitation. I always believed it made me strong. He turned to face Carter. But I have never done what you did on Kepler 7. I have never accepted permanent damage to save someone else. I do not know if I could. Carter considered his words carefully before responding. High Commander, may I tell you something about courage? Zorath nodded. Humans are afraid all the time, Carter said. We are afraid of pain. We are afraid of death. We are afraid of losing the people we love. Our bodies are fragile, and we know it. He lifted his scarred hands and looked at them. When I entered that building on Kepler 7, I was terrified. Every single time. I knew what the fire was doing to my body. I could feel my skin burning. I could smell my own flesh cooking. Zorath's face twisted with something between horror and fascination. But I could also hear children screaming, Carter continued. And I knew that my fear did not matter. Their lives mattered more than my comfort, more than my safety, more than my appearance. He lowered his hands and met Zorath's golden eyes. Courage is not the absence of fear, High Commander. It is choosing to act despite the fear. It is deciding that something else is more important than your own well-being. That is the whole point. Zorath absorbed this in silence. Then he asked the question that had been troubling him since he first read the Kepler 7 report. How do you train your warriors to overcome such fear? What technique do you use? Carter smiled sadly. We do not train them to overcome it. We cannot. The fear never goes away. We simply teach them that some things are worth being afraid for. The signing ceremony took place that afternoon. Queen Velithra and Ambassador Shaw signed the peace treaty while both delegations watched. Applause filled the chamber as the two empires officially ended their conflict. But Velithra was not finished. She raised her hand for silence. There is one more matter to address, she announced. Commander Daniel Carter, please step forward. Carter approached the Queen, his expression curious. Velithra reached into her robes and withdrew a small crystalline pendant on a silver chain. It glowed with a soft inner light. In the long history of the Kithrani Empire, Velithra said formally, we have never bestowed this honor upon an outsider. But today, I make an exception. She held up the pendant. This is the mark of the Velithra. In our language, it means one who shields others. It is given to those who protect the weak at great cost to themselves. She placed the pendant around Carter's neck. Commander Daniel Carter, I name you Velithra. May your people know that the Kithrani Empire recognizes true strength when we see it. The human delegation erupted in applause. Torres was openly crying now. Shaw looked prouder than he had ever been. Carter touched the pendant gently. Thank you, Your Majesty. I will carry this honor with respect. Later that evening, as the human delegation prepared to depart, Torres found Carter alone at a viewport, staring at the stars. Sir, she said, do you realize what you did today? You changed how an entire empire sees humanity. You made them understand what we really are. Carter shook his head slowly. I did not do anything, Lieutenant. I just sat through some insults and answered a few questions. That is not true, and you know it. Carter turned to face her. His scarred face was thoughtful. The real heroes were not me, Lieutenant. They were the children who survived Kepler 7 and grew up to build new lives. They were the colonists who rebuilt their community from nothing. I just did my job. They did the hard part. Torres smiled through her tears. You are impossible. You know that. Carter smiled back. So, I have been told. Years later, On a distant Kithrani world, a young student sat in a classroom learning about human history. Her teacher showed the class an image of Commander Daniel Carter, his scarred face looking out from the screen. "Teacher," the young student asked, "why does the human carry those marks on his skin? What happened to him?" The teacher studied the image with respect. "Those marks are not wounds, child. They are medals. Medals that humans wear on their skin." "I do not understand," the student said. "What did he do to earn them?" The teacher smiled softly. "He proved that he loved strangers enough to burn for them. And in doing so, he taught us what true strength really means." The student looked at the image for a long time, thinking about a species that would choose permanent scars over letting children die somewhere across the galaxy. The peace between humans and Kithrani grew stronger with each passing year. And whenever a young Kithrani asked about humans, the elders would tell them the story of the commander with the scarred face, the broken one who was never really broken at all.